into it this morning. Welcome to Village Church. Glad that you are here hanging out with us this morning. I hope you came in with the expectation that God has something for you this morning. So let's go ahead and get started, jumping into it, and talk a little bit about trust this morning and what that means when trust kind of gets real and it's a I guess it's really and truly, trust is easy until it isn't. Trust is easy when the water is calm, and trust is easy when the plan makes perfect sense. Trust is easy. Trust is easy when the next step feels safe. Those things are easy to trust. No matter what's around us, no matter what's going on, trust is real easy when the path is clear, when we know where we're going, know what we're doing, knowing what the directions say, right? Trust in those moments are always easy. But real faith, biblical faith, is forged in moments when obedience feels unreasonable and the situation feels unsafe. Again, listen to that again. Real faith, biblical faith, is forged in moments when obedience feels unreasonable and the situation feels unsafe. Most of us, we don't struggle believing in Jesus. Most of us don't struggle believing in Jesus. We struggle trusting Jesus with our circumstances. We believe that He's good. We just don't believe He's always good in the now. We believe He's powerful, just not always powerful on this side of the storm. And today we're going to walk through one of my most favorite stories in Scripture. The prodigal son was one. We mentioned it just a couple weeks ago, maybe last week. But in college, I read a book by a guy named John Ortberg, and we walked through it. It was a discipleship kind of a experience with a leader at the college, and we walked through this book by John Ortberg. Says if you want to walk on water, you have to get out of the boat, which is one of my favorite books as well. In Matthew 14, it drops us into one of those pivotal moments where we find ourselves choosing to get in and again choosing to get out of the boat. Not a quiet devotional setting. Not a mountaintop experience. Getting in and out of the boat requires trust, dedication, obedience, stepping into the unknown, not knowing what next is. And in this storm, we can see that it's long and exhausting and a frightening night on open water. Jesus teaches His disciples in this moment, and He's teaching us, I believe, through the process as well, what it looks like to trust God no matter what is going on. Matthew 14:22 is where we're going to jump in today. It says this, says immediately after this. So Jesus was talking to the crowds. Everybody was kind of circled around. They were listening. All was good, engaging stories, life-changing moments. Crowd was growing. People were there. Exciting moment happening. Like it wasn't low-key. It wasn't something small. It was growing in size. People were engaged. They were listening. And immediately after that moment, it says this, as Jesus insisted that His disciples get back into the boat and cross to the other side of the lake, and while He sent the people home, after sending them home, He went up into the hills by Himself to pray. Night fell while He was there alone. So again, paint the picture. People are here. They've been listening. Disciples were all there. Jesus was there. Everybody was attentive in this moment, and Jesus insists that His disciples, at this point, He turned to them, He insists to them and says, hey, it's time for you guys to head out, get in the boat, get going. I'm going to disperse this group of people. I'm going to make sure they go home. Then I'm going to go and pray all by my lonesome. I'll be up on top of the mountain, peace and quiet, life is good. Darkness fell, He was in prayer. And it says, meanwhile, those same disciples that jumped into that boat, were in trouble far away from land, it says, for a strong wind had risen, and they were fighting heavy waves. One thing we've got to know as we walk through these verses and we walk through this scripture, it says this: we have to intentionally move forward in confidence, even when it doesn't make sense. We have to intentionally move forward in confidence. I didn't say without any fear, without any worry, without any crazy thoughts in your head, but in confidence. We have to move because God has called us to, in confidence, trusting even when it doesn't make sense. Matthew tells us that word insisted. He insisted, Jesus insisted the disciples to get into the boat. He insisted, he pushed, he pressed, he said, there is no other option. You guys have got to go. And that word matters. It matters to everybody sitting in this room. Jesus didn't just suggest it. He didn't ask for their opinion. Would you guys like to help me disperse this crowd? Would you like to hang out? We just travel together? Would you want to take your time? No, he didn't. He insisted, it says, that they get into the boat. And here's what's easy to miss. The disciples weren't being punished. They were being obedient. They were being obedient to the master's call. They were being obedient to what Jesus had asked them to do. They had just watched Jesus feed thousands. Momentum, again, remember, building. The crowd wanted to make this guy king. He just turned fishes and loaves. Life was changing, right? This was big. They wanted to make this guy, they wanted to make Jesus king. But Jesus shuts it all down. Abruptly, it just ends just like that. And he says, get in the boat. We got to go. Can't hang around. Why would you do something like that? And again, we can look at these verses and skip right over this part because the cool part's coming up. But in just a moment, we'll see the importance. But why would you shut it all down just like that in a split second? Why? Maybe it's as simple as because Jesus will never allow success to distract him from the Father's plan. Remember, he done spent time. The enemy had already tempted and told you, I'll give you everything. Or he was going to, right? I'll give you everything. Keys to the kingdom. You got it. All is good. You're going to get it. Just follow this. Success will never distract God from what his plan is. And also it teaches us success should not distract us from what God's calling us to do. We've talked 100 times over what makes you rich. You can have all the money in the world, be the most miserable individual. What truly makes an individual rich? Success doesn't make you rich. Leon Morris writes this, and it was critical for Jesus to remove the disciples. He says it was critical for him to remove the disciples before they got caught up in the excitement of king making. The mission could not be hijacked by public opinion or emotional momentum. And I want you to think about that for a minute. When we think about what God calls us to, what He's leading people to, some of it's messy and hard and difficult. It's not always easy. It's not always pretty. And a lot of times there's no credit given for what's been done. Nobody pats you on the back and tells you a good job. You don't make front page of Time magazine as being a missionary or a pastor or a believer. You're not going to do that. That's not going to happen. So success could not hijack what God's plan was, and success cannot hijack what God's doing for us, even though our tendency is to lean that way. We like a good pat on the back. We like a good attaboy. Good job, son. Good job, daughter. We like those things. But we know, in looking at this, we believe, looking back at it, going, yeah, I could see where that could happen now. I never thought of it that way. I never thought of the fact that maybe the disciples needed to depart because the momentum was building. And you know how you can get carried away in excitement, right? You hear a song, you at a concert, and tears start flowing down, and you're like, what are you talking about? They're talking about a bad breakup. Dang, Taylor Swift. Right? Emotions can get the best of us. Ask somebody who's got angry sometimes. You're looking at that person, you've already imagined in your face. But you don't. You look at him and say, I love you. I'm about to slap you. Emotions get the best of us sometimes. It shakes us to the core. Sometimes Jesus sends us away from what feels successful because it's not aligned with what's faithful. I'll preach them. That's a whole nother message right there. But many times we want to assume or associate that the storms that we face in life are because of one's disobedience or even our own disobedience. However, some of the storms we're in didn't come from rebellion. They came from our obedience to who He has called us to be. Again, think of this. Some of the storms that we have faced didn't come from rebellion. It came from obedience to who He's called us to be. That He says, I will, if you would just trust me. Again, I've said it before and didn't promise it'll be easy, just worth it. Obedience is not always easy. Obedience is sometimes really, really difficult. And we sometimes look at it and we want to say it's because of disobedience, but that's not it. The disciples didn't drift into the storm. They rode straight into it because Jesus told them to go. And that changes how we read this story. Some of you are confused because you followed Jesus and life got harder. You hit more storms, it felt like. Things kept coming, and it was one thing after another. You prayed and the water got more rough. You obeyed and the resistance increased. But obedience does not guarantee that there's going to be calm seas. It guarantees that Jesus is still Lord of them. See, being in God's will doesn't mean you won't face storms. It simply means that your storm has a purpose and you have to pass through it. Trusting in Jesus sometimes feels absolutely absurd. Lord, you're leading me here and it's crazy. I don't know why. Matthew says the disciples are fighting heavy waves late into the night. I don't know if some people like the ocean, some people don't like the ocean, but if you ever see red flags, you know that the current is strong. And if you've ever stood on a shoreline and you watched as a hurricane has come through, or you've seen video and you've seen TV, waves upon waves are crashing, and it's all over the place. You can't stand up without falling down if the current is too strong or if the waves are too big. So you can imagine being in a boat. It ain't like they had a Honda engine on the back of it and they could crank it up and just start driving. It's not like that. It's being able to row the boat amidst all of these crashing waves, all of these things around you. Trying to row a boat in water is crazy. Kind of like rowing a boat upstream. You are fighting the resistance and everything around you is crashing. These guys, that's what's happening in this moment. They're fighting for their life. It is a raging storm. The wind's blowing, so there's wind resistance. The waves are crashing, so there's wave resistance. And all the while, they've got two paddles trying to get to where they want to go. They're exhausted. They're frustrated. They're afraid. And then the moment happens. Jesus comes to them walking on water. I can promise you this. I don't know how comforting it would be to be in the middle of a storm with waves crashing and I see some stranger in the distance walking toward me. I don't know if you've ever been on a cruise ship before, any type of boat in open water, but anytime at night, remember night had fallen, these guys were in the boat. It wasn't like there were street lights or lamps that lit the way. They didn't have a spotlight on the front of the boat to shine where they was going. Dark means dark. And by this point in time, it was dark. You also know in the middle of a storm, guess what? The moon ain't bright. There's clouds blocking the moonlight, the only light that they have. So again, imagine this picture in your head of what this storm was like. Pitch black. Me and my homeboys in a boat. We rocking side to side, not a little bit, but up and down all around. Probably a few of them, nah. If not a few of them, I can tell you I would have been. So it's all just a whole hot mess, darkness, craziness. And then all of a sudden, from a distance, they see somebody walking toward them. That's not comforting, that's terrifying. They don't say, oh, good, it's Jesus. They say first, it's a ghost. If anybody's going to walk on water, it's going to be me trying to get out the boat going in the opposite direction. Fear has a way of distorting what God is doing in front of us. Remember, they said he was a ghost at first. They were distracted. They missed the moment. They missed what they could see, what was in front of them. They were scared. All of these factors playing a part in this, but it says that they looked and they saw, and they believed it was a ghost at first. See, when you're overwhelmed, even Jesus can look unfamiliar to you if you're not intentionally looking for him. But listen to what he says. Matthew 14:27. It says, Jesus spoke to them at once. Don't be afraid, he said. Take courage. I am here. Now, these words are loaded. These words are loaded. Once he speaks, they recognize who he is. They now get it. Again, excitement. He's fixing to calm the storm. But he says, take courage. Don't be afraid, he said. Take courage. I am here. Take courage echoes Joshua 1:9, which was God's call to strength rooted in his presence. And he says, I am here. And those words are more than just assurance. See, in the Greek, it echoes God's covenant name of I am. And Jesus is saying the same God who spoke to Moses is standing on these waves right here, right now. Craig Bloomberg says this, points out that this is one of Jesus' clearest self-revelations of his divinity up into this moment. Can you imagine? Can you imagine what it's like, what they experienced during this time? To now look at us and look at our own life and go, you know what? We're not in the middle of a rowboat with all of my friends hanging out. We're not in the middle of that, and that's not taking place. But guess what? The storms of your life are surrounding you. And there's struggle, there's trouble all along the way that we face and adversity we go through. And we can easily look and go, there's storms all around me. I'm looking for Jesus, but I don't see him. Or you're so distracted by the storms around you that you miss what God is doing, and you think that every individual either is coming against you, has something against you, but instead God's saying, just look past everybody and everything and see that I am here. And I've always been here. See, here's the truth. The power to trust does not come from understanding the storm. It comes from knowing who is present in it. Faith doesn't eliminate fear. It gives fear a reason to loosen its grip. See, faith begins when we step, not when we feel ready. So many times in ministry, all through years, from students to adults, that's been the common thread that you hear is, hey, do you want to do this, or do you want to serve here? Do you want to be a part of this? And the words, I'm not ready yet. I still got to work on me. I still got to get myself together. I'm just not ready to do that or to be a part of that. But faith doesn't begin when we're ready. It begins when we take that first step, when we're not ready, when we're messy and broken, when we've made life all about us. It begins when we take a step despite all of the things that we are, whether we think that we're a failure, whether we think that we're no good, whether we think that we're worth it or not. At the end of the day, faith begins when we take that very first step, not when you feel like it or when you feel ready. And Peter speaks up. Matthew 14:28 says this. It says, then Peter called to him, Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you, walking on water. Again, this is a thing that if you can do it, then you know God's given you the power to do it. And nobody in this room ever walked on water. Now, you may walked on a puddle, but your feet was on the ground. You had never walked on water. If you have, or if you think you can, it's okay, we can. We can go try it, and we can witness you trying to walk across the Chattahoochee. You're going to sink. You're going to sink. Peter looked and he says, if it's you, help me defy all the odds. Help us to calm all of our fears. If this is you, Lord, if you're calling me to do this, if you're calling me to be greater for your glory, Lord, if this is you, then let me walk on water just like you. It's not out of arrogance. He's asking for confirmation. He's asking for confirmation. And Jesus answers with one word. Yes. With yes. Come. Come. That's it. There wasn't no safety briefing before he took a first step. They didn't make sure he had on his life vest, his goggles, and little swimmies. He didn't have his fins to be able to paddle faster. No flotation device. No snorkels. No safety briefing. No 5-step plan. It was a simple invitation to come. Faith often sounds like a single word from Jesus, and you have to find the courage to obey it. Peter steps out, and for a moment, this guy does the absolute impossible. He does the impossible. For a moment, Peter, the crazy guy, Peter, the broken guy, Peter, walks on water. For a single moment, he does the impossible. Peter walked on water before he sank, before he panicked, before he doubted. See, many people will only remember Peter for sinking. They'll remember him for sinking, for getting distracted. They'll remember him for having allowed fear to conquer him. They remember Peter for that single moment, but heaven remembers Peter for stepping, for a single step. So often, we encourage you here at Village Church and churches all across the country just to take a single step towards what God is calling you to do. Not to make excuses. Not to have this little pity party. Oh, pitiful me, I can't do it because of this. It's like looking at Jesus and he says, hey, I want you to jump out and I want you to serve your community. I want you to give back somehow. Or he calls you and he says, I want you to serve where your feet are planted in the church you're in. I want you to give to the church that you're a part of. And we go, yes, God, I will. But first I got to do this. Or but first, man, we got so many big buts in here that it stops people from doing what God wants us to do. Now put that in your journal. Tweet about that or X about that and put it on Facebook. My pastor said we got a bunch of big butts in here. We may have more people next week because of that. You can't fail at what you never step into. You won't ever be a Peter if you can't step into it. What's God calling you to? Is he telling you to eliminate something? Step into it. And if you fail at it, fail at it. Let God, that's what God's there for. To show you right and wrong and to walk with you, to carry you, to lead you. But you'll never experience what God wants you to do unless you step into it. Because, see, we get worried, we get fearful, and realize that losing focus creates chaos. But even in that moment, Jesus remains close. What do you mean by that? Let's look at Matthew 14. It says this, But when he saw the strong wind and the waves, he was terrified and began to sink. Save me, Lord, he shouted. Notice this. Peter didn't sink because he stepped out. He sank Because he shifted his focus. That's why. How is that any different from us? How is it? We can be all on fire, be all great and grand, jump all in, give it our very best shot, do everything that God's called us to, be a part of Village Church, serve at Village Church, give to Village Church, support the mission of Village Church. We reach people, revive believers, renew community. All is great and grand, but just like every single person in this room, all it takes is a split second and we lose focus. And then we find ourselves drifting off course. And then pretty soon we've ended up in the Sahara Desert and it's dry as bones and it's like Ezekiel. We need the Lord to bring us back to life. And what happens when we ask that? What happens when we say, Lord, forgive me? Lord, I surrender. What happens when we say, God, I've walked and I've strayed away just a little bit and I need you to bring me back? Guess what happens? He's there. He's there. But Peter didn't sink because he stepped out. He sank because he lost focus. The wind didn't change. The waves didn't grow. And Peter's attention changed. That's us. That's what we do. We've got to stay focused. It's mission critical that we stay focused. I just saw Mason, caught eye contact with him. It was a little weird. I looked at you just then. But I thought about you when you're going down a rapid, Mason, on a kayak, and you're in a gorge and the water's flowing. For a moment, what would happen if you just closed your eyes and you didn't look ahead? Well, Mason probably would not be here this morning. It wouldn't be good, but that's what happens. It's like a faith journey. If we lose focus of what God is calling us to, then we are on a crash course that will absolutely affect the mission. We step out in faith. We start strong. And then all of a sudden we start measuring the waves. Fear grows loud when focus grows weak. But notice this. We've seen it, right? In the boat, storm's coming. All of a sudden they're panicking, panic mode, thinking they're all going to die. And then Jesus comes out of nowhere, freaks them all out. They're scared to death. They see that it's Jesus. He says, don't be afraid. I am the great I am. I am here. Calls Peter out of the boat. Peter says, if it's you, let me walk on water. Jesus says, all right, that's fine. Walk out on water. He gets out of the boat. He steps. He begins to sink. Fear grows when focus loses its sight. And we know this, though. Peter doesn't drown. He cries out. He cries out. And Jesus responds immediately. He don't wait. He's not like, I'm finna show you, sucker. I'm finna watch you get up to your nose and you're going to be panicking. It's none of that. He doesn't do that. It says immediately, he reached out and he grabbed him. Matthew 14 says, Jesus immediately reached out and grabbed him. You have so little faith, Jesus said. Why did you doubt me? Now, Jesus doesn't shame him. He saves him. He saves him. It's not like, why did you doubt me? Now I'm going to punish you. Wait till we get back on land and I'm getting my big boy belt out. None of those things. He saves him. Douglas Hare writes that Peter represents every believer caught between faith and doubt, stepping out, sinking, crying out, and discovering that grace is sufficient. Even when our faith falters, Jesus' grip does not. And if we truly look back at the story of our life that we have lived, the highs and the lows, all the moments where we rebelled, all the moments where we were distracted, all the moments where we lost our focus and it felt like the world around us was crashing, guess what? If you're in this room, He saved you. He saved you. Trust often looks like risk to everybody else. Can you imagine what those disciples thought when Peter decided he was going to take that step and get out of the boat in the middle of all of the craziness that had taken place? I know I would be looking as an individual just on the side. If I wasn't Peter and I was somebody else, I'd be, boy, this is about to be a mess. This idiot. There he goes again. Trust looks like craziness and risk to everyone else. Anyone who has ever done something dangerous understands this moment. I think Mason's crazy. I've seen the waterfalls he decides to fly off of, and he don't have wings. It's crazy, but God has gifted this kid, this man, with so much talent. And I look at you guys, and God's gifted you with so much, and you go, well, I can't do that. No, but what God's gifted you in is the greatest for His glory. So it's not like it's less than, but it's equivalent to whatever somebody else's gift is. It's still the equivalent, no matter how less than you think it may be. Serving the coffee is equivalent to the greatest calling of being a missionary overseas. Guess what? Serving children, leading children is the equivalent to being able to pray with somebody for salvation, because guess what? That's what God's called you to do. He's called you to be the hands and the feet. He's called you to give glory to His name. You know, think about skydiving. They're nuts. You put on gear that you didn't make. You trust instructions that you did not design. You jump out of a perfectly good airplane, hoping that the parachute works. And most people say, I'll do it, but only if I'm strapped to someone else who's done it before. That's faith. That's faith. Not the absence of fear, but confidence in who you're attached to. Think about a child learning to ride a bike. The parent runs beside them, holding the seat, saying, you got this. I remember doing this. We did this with Olivia, and we did this with Grace. And so many times they were laid out in the middle of the road. I'm not saying I laughed, but I did. I laughed. But then I think back, and my parents, there's oftentimes I'll say my parents did something, Mike, and I wonder what my dad was thinking when he did it, because I wondered if he loved me. But in this instance, I realized they did love me, because what my dad would do was he wouldn't put me in the road. He would come to the top of our yard, and we had a fence, and he would just push me, and I would run head first into the fence. Without a helmet. We didn't have helmets back then. You don't wear helmets when you ride a bike, you pansies. We don't do that. We rub dirt on it. We lost a tooth. It's an honorary thing to smile with no teeth. I did this. My dad would push me and run me into a fence. But like a child learning to ride a bike, right? We run beside them. We hold the seat. They think that they got it, and they really don't. And then when you let them loose, they fall. But we're challenging them the whole time, going, you got this. You got this. You can do it. You can do this. Pedal faster. Pedal faster. Hold the handlebar straight. That's Peter on water. The child believes, not because they're strong, but because the parent is so close to them. They can hear the voice. And it takes away the fear, not completely, but it gives them enough excitement to go, I can do this. And that's Jesus walking alongside of us in faith. When He's called you to do something, it doesn't matter that you think you can do it or not. If He's called you to quit something, it doesn't matter if you think you can quit it or not. It's the small voice that you hear. It's the Holy Spirit within that's stirring, going, you can do this. And you press on. And you take a step. Because, see, faith is stepping out because you trust who's holding you, not because you trust yourself. See, we trust so many things. We trust so many things in this world, but why do we not trust Jesus? We say we do, but do we? We say we do, but do we? Every day we trust car manufacturers, engineers, we trust doctors, pilots, builders. We trust people with medication that we can't even pronounce. We trust vaccines that we don't know the results of. We trust all sorts of different things. We don't know who made it. We don't know who did it. We don't know anything. We trust, but we didn't have any hand in it. We trust them. But we don't trust Jesus like that when He tells us to do something. See, we get on highways without knowing who's driving next to us. They could be raging lunatics. We fly planes that we didn't inspect. We live in houses that we did not frame. We trust systems. We trust strangers. We trust technology. But when Jesus says, come to me, all who are weary, and I will give you rest. We hesitate. Why? Why don't we trust Him with all things? Why don't we trust Him that He can forgive us? Why don't we trust Him that His plan is greater than anything that the world tells us? Why don't we trust Him to break addictions? Why don't we trust Him to heal us? Why don't we trust Him to fight our battles? We sing the song. Why don't we trust Him in all of that? We sing it, we say it, but when it really boils down to it, we hesitate. We hesitate in what He's called us to do because we've allowed, for whatever reason, to either doubt ourselves or be too scared to step into it. Because trusting Jesus means that we must surrender control. Peter walking on water is a picture of trust, failure, rescue, and restoration. And here's the good news. Matthew 14:32 says, when they climbed back into the boat, the wind stopped. Then the disciples worshiped Him. You really are the Son of God, they exclaimed, which is interesting to me. So the waves never stopped rushing or crashing on the boat. It was still dark as dark could be. I don't know if Jesus was a bright figure. I don't know if there was a glow that He lit up around. I don't know all those things, but it was still dark as dark. The storm's still raging. There's not stars in the moon that's shining bright. And at the end of it, the wind stopped. And the disciples in that moment say something really funny here because they go, you really are the Son of God. You mean you doubted that? After all of this, there was still doubt in your heart? So really and truly, it's not much different from us. It's not much different from us that we still have the same doubts today that cause us to hesitate with anything God's called us to because of fear. Because we start thinking of what we have to do, what we owe, who it's going to be with, what we're going to do, all of these different things, we begin to hesitate. The storm didn't teach them Jesus was useful. It taught them that Jesus was Lord. The storm did not teach them that Jesus was useful. The storm taught them that Jesus was Lord. So now, how do we view our very own storms that we go through? So what He calls us to is to step out because He's already there. See, some of you are standing in the boat right now. You are. You hear Jesus calling, you feel the nudge, but fear is louder than your faith. Hear this. If Jesus leads, you can follow. If you falter, He will rescue. And if you cry out, He will respond. See, trusting Jesus doesn't mean you won't sink. It means you won't sink alone. And the confidence that the confidence that you have in Him will be what allows you to see Him clearly ahead. Peter walking on water shows us what it looks like to trust in Jesus. Also what it looks like to lose sight. And also to be brought back to the plan. And in the same, Jesus who stood on those waves is standing before us going, come. Church, let me tell you for just a moment as we wrap this thing up. It's one thing to talk about Peter walking on water. And it's another thing to realize Jesus is still calling people today to step out and to live out their faith. Some of you know exactly where this message lands for you. And it doesn't have to be a salvation call for you. Many people in this room, I would say, are saved. But I can promise you that there's many people in this room who've not stepped out. I don't know what that means for you. I don't know. I'm not sure what it looks like practically for you, because I see it from the standpoint of a church, a body of believers being the hands and feet of Jesus, serving one another, loving one another, walking with one another, leading people to grow in their relationship with Jesus, right? This isn't it if for you just to be here. If nothing more, God has called you to reach the lost. Every person in this room. When was the last time that you reached a lost person and brought them with you? Have you ever? Have you ever intentionally pursued lost people for God's glory? And you may say, "Well, I'm not there yet." Again, big but. I don't care. Neither does God. He didn't say get your junk together. He said, "I've called you." He didn't say, "Peter, don't have any doubt before you step on that water." He called Peter, said, "Come." In all of the craziness, he said, "Come." And what did Peter do? He stepped out. I don't know what God's calling you to, but what I can promise you is this: it's not just to sit here on a Sunday morning. It's to serve, to be a part, to give, to lead. Small groups, village groups, engage. It's to be the hands and the feet of the church. It's to go, how can I help? Where can I get plugged in? Who is it I can lead? Outside of these walls that are not here, who is it that I can lead? Some of you know exactly where this message landed for you. You're in the boat. You've been there a while. You're safe, but guess what? You're starting to get a little restless. And 9 times out of 10, what happens is in that restlessness, people will go, "Well, the Lord's just not speaking to me no more, so I'm going to find another church." Guess what? It's the same junk at another church. You take it with you, and you sit there long enough, you get a little restless when they start calling you out, and you leave and go somewhere else. It's a pattern. We see this. I've been in ministry long enough to see it. And I'm not saying you're guilty of it, but you're going to hear it. You're going to see it in people. That's what they do. That's what our nature does, because our nature doesn't lean toward Jesus. It leans toward sin, because that's what caused us to fall. And we've got to fight to stay focused on who God's called us to be. So you're safe, but you're getting restless. You hear Jesus calling, but the wind is too loud and the waves feel real. And here's what I need you to hear clearly. Jesus does not call you out of the boat to embarrass you. He calls you out of the boat because He's already there. Peter didn't step into nothing. He stepped towards someone. And maybe for you, that step looks like trusting God again after disappointment. That you've been hurt before. Maybe it looks like surrendering control. Maybe it looks like saying yes to Jesus for the very first time. Some of you aren't drowning, but you are exhausted from rowing. You've been fighting the wind in your own strength. You've been trying to keep things together. And Jesus is standing in front of you saying, "Take courage, I'm here." And some of you relate more to Peter after he started sinking. You stepped out once, you trusted before, but fear crept in and life hit you hard. And you feel like you failed. Again, Peter is not remembered for sinking. Heaven celebrated when he took a single step. And when he cried out, Jesus immediately reached out for him. And that same Jesus reaches out to us now. So what are we going to do? In just a moment, we're going to pray, and I want you to know that this isn't about pressure or it's not about emotion. This is about response. If today you'd say, "Jonathan, I need to trust Jesus for the first time or maybe all over again," I want you to pray with me, then I will. I'll pray with you. If today you say, "I've been trying to control everything and I need to surrender," pray with me, because I am my own worst enemy. I'll pray with you. If you stepped out and you're sinking, then cry out. Surrender it all to God. Trust that Jesus is around you. Jesus responds to that prayer. So if that's you, where you are, I want you to not do anything crazy. I don't want you to stand up. I don't want you to wave your arms like you just don't care. Nothing like that. I want you to sit tight. I want your eyes closed this morning. And I just want you within to maybe, if this is you, whisper that prayer. Whisper this: Jesus, I hear you calling. I'm tired of holding you in my own strength. I'm tired of holding on in my own strength. And Lord, I trust you. I step toward you. Save me. Lead me. I give you my life. Church, if you prayed that prayer, no matter if it's a first time for salvation or if it's a surrender or if it's you're in the middle of the storm and you're trying to give it to Him, guess what, man? Jesus has you. Now the wind may not stop immediately, but His grip is sure and it's solid. And for the rest of us this week, my hope and my prayer is that you live with this truth in mind. Trusting Jesus doesn't mean you won't sink. It just means you ain't alone.